a world in the US real estate market without buyer's agents. Now, maybe that's dramatic, maybe it isn't. Let me tee this up a bit, give the audience some context, and then we'll start to get into it. So, I think most people are aware, I hope, of the two major class action lawsuits that are happening right now. They're set for trial that have to do with thousands of homeowners that are essentially suing like 4 or 5 of the major real estate franchises in our industry and NAR. And the argument that they're making is that they believe sellers should no longer be obligated to pay a buyer's agent if they bring a buyer to the house. Okay, so that's the lay of the land. Now, until recently, as recent as last week, even myself, I was like, there's no chance that our industry can change. But 2 things happened last week that I think changes everything. That a new world, a new real estate industry, not only is it probable, but some industry leaders think it's absolutely going to happen. Like, we should actually start to prepare. And that's what we'll talk about in today's episode. So two things happen. I'll tee those up. And then I want to talk about if this happens, and this being the US real estate market transitions from how we do it right now with traditionally 2 agents involved. Seller pays agent 6%, 5%. The agent splits that with another agent to bring a buyer. If that's a thing of the past, and we start doing it like most of Europe, Australia, Russia, if we start doing it like all of these other countries do it, where there's just one agent involved, what does the landscape look like? So here's what happened last week. All right. My biggest concern is let me pull this up and I'll share my screen. There's all kinds of commission lawsuits on this. Can you guys see my,
Yep.
How's that? There we go. All right. So on my screen right now, this just happened last week. There was a smaller commission lawsuit, and the MLS, it's called PIN, P-I-N. It settled. So this MLS said, okay, we agree to pay $3 million in damages and stop requiring sellers to offer buyer broker compensation in the MLS. That was one of the things that happened last week. And certainly we'll talk about how that impacts the 2 major class action lawsuits in a second. And then here's the second thing that happened. Anybody that's been living under a bridge who doesn't know Stefan Swinepool, he's probably the most influential voice in the industry. So he consults everybody from Tom Ferry to Mike Ferry to NAR to Keller Williams to Remax to Coldwell Banker. If they want any information, Stefan Swinepool is essentially the real estate coach for the real estate industry. So that's who we're talking about. He put out this letter last week to the real estate industry. I'm not going to read the whole thing because I'll put people to sleep. I just want to share a couple things. All right, real quick, and then we'll get right back to the content. If you're a real estate agent, you're looking to build a listing-based business, a business where you can generate a multiple 6-figure income, a business that doesn't require you to waste thousands of dollars on the new marketing gimmicks, then I'm going to invite you to click the link right underneath this video to learn about our Listing Agent Academy coaching program. This is a 6-month intense coaching system that more than 3,000 agents from every market all over the country have now gone through. And here's the reality. Here's the truth. I will shoot you straight. This program is not for everyone. This is for agents who value being around winners. They value being in a community of other real estate agents that actually show up, that actually put forth the work. And this is for agents that embrace high levels of accountability and visibility. To get the details, all you have to do is click the link beneath this video. You can schedule a coaching consultation and then you can decide for yourself. So with that being said, let's jump back into the content. Here's what he said. He said, industry colleagues, the intense legal regulatory scrutiny on the residential real estate brokerage industry's predominant or compensation structure in which buyer brokers receive compensation directly from listing brokers via the MLS, mandatory essentially cooperation, has just hit a critical point. What he said was a decoupling of buyer broker compensation from the listing broker compensation to some degree will most likely happen. He goes on to say, not only is he saying it's most likely going to happen, but he gives 3 recommendations on what the industry should be doing right now as a result of it. He's saying NAR should immediately pass a mandatory rule to the MLS and the code of ethics. So they're saying update that immediately, right now. Let's not even wait for the judge to rule on these. Let's just change it now. Crazy. This right here, number 1, if NAR does this, the U.S. real estate industry is changing overnight. The second thing he said, not only do we want NAR to make these changes, we think brokerages, every brokerage should make a change as well. And every agent should change all of their scripting, all of their marketing materials on how they service buyers and sellers. He's saying, prepare for this right now. Don't wait for a judge to rule on this and essentially you get caught with your pants down. So that's the context that I want to talk about in the episode today. And essentially, if somebody's watching or listening to this and they're like, well, what would happen? What would it result in? What would happen essentially is commissions would get cut in half, because if a buyer wants buyer representation, they would have to compensate their own buyer's agent. That's the big debate. That's a huge debate. I'll tell you from my own experience, and we'll talk about, we've got some agents that we coach in other countries. We'll talk about how they see this going down. But for the vast majority of those countries, there are no buyer's agents because the buyers are simply just going to the listing agent. Right. So let me stop there. Let me get your guys' thoughts on where we're at, and then we'll kind of unpack it even deeper.
Go ahead, Ben.
Well, I mean, you don't even have to go to another country. That's how the commercial industry has been doing it forever.
True. Great point. So
it's like, I mean, I'm very familiar with that process, just doing with a lot of small multifamily deals and whatnot. And it's just interesting because maybe the commercial space, those types of buyers are so used to doing multiple transactions a year, maybe even more. And they just know, hey, all the information I need is coming from the listing agent. I'm familiar with the process. So either I'm going to go unrepresented and just use the listing agent, or they do bring the buyer's agent because they found the deal or whatnot. But that buyer agent knows, hey, I got to build my fee on top, right?
Yeah.
So obviously in residential, typically somebody doesn't sell except once a decade, right? So being represented, I mean, as we think, it is important, right? So how do you see that going with, dual agency is a big conversation, and essentially that could be what we're seeing a lot. How do you navigate that?
So couple things. I guess we'll deal with this with one issue at a time.
Sure.
We'll deal with that one first. That's the debate is, what is the true value of a buyer's agent? Now, I think that the industry would broad brush that and try to position or try to politic their way into say, well, buyer's agents bring a lot of value to the table. That's a broad brush. Some do, most don't. That'd be my argument. Some do. Yeah. A very small percentage of them do. But the vast majority of the weekend warriors, the one that's a full-time teacher and is a realtor in the weekends, like during the summertime, I mean, they're just opening doors. Yeah. Hey, do you guys like it? I can write an offer. I mean, that's to the extent of the service. I think, honestly, people are going to be mad. I just think this would wipe out 30, 40% of the agents. That's what I believe would happen. maybe even more, because how it works in other countries is it's super rare for the consumer to go and hire an agent, pay them, when really all they want access to is the product. The product is the listing. Right. And it's the listing agent who represents the product. You see, here's what it's like. This is the best analogy, and then Colton, jump in. It's like the car business here. If you want the car, where do you go? You go to the dealer who has the car. You don't go find a car rep to find you a car. You go to the dealership who has the product. That's the way I see this happen.
But if you rewind, that's the way it used to be with brokers, right? There wasn't the internet. You had to get the buyer's agent to give you access to all the listings.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. It's like buyers, you know, a buyer's agent's value prop, you know, now is like, hey, we're going to find you the right home and like buyers have been doing that for 10 years now with Zillow. Like they know how to shop for homes. They know how to put in their search criteria on Zillow. Like the value's not there anymore. And what's interesting, I have a feeling that this might create some opportunity in the real estate space with the way AI is coming in now and just different opportunities. The other argument that the politics side of, oh, well, they're going to represent you and make sure you don't make any bad decisions and this and that. There's going to be services I could see already coming in for a fee or whatever to just guide you through the transaction to make sure you're asking the right questions to review your contract. They don't need to pay a 3% commission for a service like that. And that's going to allow a Zillow to come in and offer something like that to buyers.
100%. Buyer concierge.
Yeah, an attorney.
Yeah, or an attorney. I mean, that's what people do in every other country. It's just like
and a commercial and whatnot.
Yeah. So, man, I just lost my train of thought. But I just think that this plays well for agents that have been focused on being a listing agent, and that's why at first I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. But the longer this has been going on, the more I've been thinking about this, the more agents I've been talking to in other countries. If it happens, I'm actually pretty excited. And here's why. Okay. So I'm excited because it's what we do. We believe in agents building a listing business. And not because just that, but here's for the agent. Check this out. Going back to the whole dealership thing. If an agent gets a listing in a world where there are no buyer's agents, think about this. All the buyers come to you. And those buyers have houses to sell. So we interviewed one of the agents that we coach, right, from Australia. And he's like, every house I list, I get 20, 30, 40 people through an open house. And half those people have houses to sell. So now you have a true flywheel business. That every listing you get, there is no more buyer's agents. I mean, okay, there's an argument to say, maybe some buyers somehow are going to justify, I'm going to pay my agent $15,000 to show me this house. I'm not totally sold on that yet. Most of the buyers are going to go directly to the source. It's happening right now. So that's what leads me to believe that it will absolutely happen, right? Mm-hmm. Most buyers are going right to the listing agent now. So when you have the product, just like a car, the buyer, the consumer goes right to the property. And if that person, as you're having these conversations, it's a world with as it relates to lead generation, where agents get exactly what they want, which is prospects coming to them. Yeah. What an amazing world. So your guys' thoughts on that first point. And there's a bunch of other upsides I see if this thing goes down.
What the first thing I was going to ask your guys' opinion on, but I think it almost answered itself, but still I'll ask, is how this changes, like Zillow's model, right? Because there's no more buyer's agents, but now is it going to be the listing agent that maybe they're going to gate, the listing agent has to pay for those leads. I'm curious, what do you guys think on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think their model has to change. Mm-hmm. If there's no buyer agent commissions, when I say no, I shouldn't do what I said at the beginning of the show. I won't broad brush it. But if, let's just say, buyer agent commissions are like the anomaly, like they happen sometimes, but like 90% of the time, there's no buyer's agent in the deal. Yeah, I think the Realtor.coms and the Zillows of the world, they go to a model where now it's a true marketing game. The days of a listing agent just throwing it in the MLS and sitting back and letting it do its thing, because that's the other thing. The listing agent has to bring more to the table too, from a marketing perspective. You can't just rely on buyer's agents selling your property, right? This is a true game of marketing, of positioning, of creating a world where your listings are standing out from all the other listings, and you are selling your own listing. Well, to be fair, that's what the consumers think is happening now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the consumer hires a listing agent and they believe in their hearts of hearts that the listing agent is selling the property. It's just super rare. That's coming up in these lawsuits too, to be fair. So this does put that direct value proposition from listing agent to consumer, which is the way I think it ought to be, by the way, where seller hires you, Colton, to sell my house, and Colton, you sell my house. You brought the offers. You presented all the offers. You found the buyer. There's not this other middleman involved.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it makes the trend. Although like the debate of dual agency comes up, having one agent involved makes the transaction so much smoother. We've all been in those transactions, and it's just like there's one agent, right? Experienced agent in this case, most likely, dealing with two people that might be emotional. Now you don't have a third party that's also emotional. And it tends to be that, my experience, not always, but an agent that doesn't have as much experience can also get emotion. So you play the game of telephone and you just don't always get the real picture.
100% spot on. That was one thing that, Nicholas, our agent that works in Australia, that was one of the biggest upsides that he said when I interviewed him. He said, these transactions he's like, I couldn't even imagine a world having to deal with another realtor, and then they got to talk to their buyer, and then they got to wait. Like they all go so smooth. You're the one talking to the buyer.
Yeah.
You're talking to the buyer. Hey, here's what you need to do to get this property. It is not dual agency. That's it. Colton, you brought that up. Ben, you brought that up. That's not what we're talking about. Dual agency would be gone.
Represent the seller.
That's it.
And you're just communicating with the buyer.
Correct. Yep. Exactly. Again, I go back to the dealership. The dealership is protecting their margin. You want this car. Okay. I'm negotiating with you, but I represent this vehicle, right?
Yeah.
In this case, we represent the house. So if you want this house, I'm negotiating with you, the buyer. Hey, here's what you need to do in order to get this house, and now you're writing the offer. You're having the conversation. You're talking to the buyer's lender. You know their qualification. You're looking at their financing. You're looking at their approval. You're looking at their inspection. You're looking at the appraisal. I mean, you control the entire process truly as a listing agent, which is the way that should be. That's what's best for the seller. You have a lot more control in the process. That's another upside. Colin, you want to add something to that?
It makes sense that the person with the product is the one who gets paid.
That's right.
Yeah, it sounds so obvious, but like when it hasn't been that way for so long, and we're so used to it, it's like, yeah, could you imagine having a concierge come into a car dealership trying to get a spiff off of the car? Like,
never.
No
other industries work that way.
No, unless you go straight to the person and you more of like you're hunting for a product for somebody, right?
Yeah.
But I think listing agents will take that role too. Okay, you didn't win this house. I had 3 offers. Hey, I might have another one coming up, or I know somebody that might be willing to sell. And then you represent them in finding it, but then represent that seller. And
here's the other thing. This goes back to the argument of like, I often talk to agents when they're trying to convert a for sale by owner. The for sale by owner has this twisted too. Check this out. The for sale by owner thinks this is how it works. They think that buyer Bob goes and seeks out realtor Ben and says, Ben, can you find me a home for sale? Which is not what's happening.
Yeah.
It's the best example ever. Buyers, how do I say this? We find buyers through listings. Because buyers that's how buyers are coming about. Buyers don't go to realtor first. Say, can you find me something? No, they just go to the internet, search homes for sale, city and state, and blah. They have more information than most realtors. They don't need the realtor to, Colton, you said it. They don't need them to find anything. So my argument always with agents that I'm coaching that are trying to convert a for sale by owner, the for sale by owner thinks it's still the 80s. That these buyers are walking into some office saying, hey, can you guys find me out? No. Buyers go to the product. Buyers identify themselves by the listing. That's how you find out about a buyer, is through the listing, aka Zillow, $1 billion business. That's what's happening, people. I don't see anybody that can debate that. I would love to debate that, because
do you
buyers
think this would put them out of business? No,
because I think what would happen is exactly what Colton said. I think that all they do is go to you, Ben, and say, if you want your listings on Zillow, you want more buyers to for your seller, you got to pay now to put your properties on Zillow.
But why? Because I'm putting it on the MLS. They can publicly access that.
No, but if you want the leads and the inquiries from that.
But I do the open house. I do this. I do that.
It'll be interesting. I don't know.
Because what blows my mind about Zillow is we pay all this money to be a realtor, to have access to the MLS, all this stuff, and then we just give it to Zillow.
Yeah.
And then they sell it for the buyer.
Well, that's a whole nother topic. I interviewed one of the executives of Realtor.com a year ago. She was there when they made these agreements, when the MLS gave our data away to these IDX, these syndicates. There's a whole story on that. Maybe we'll talk about that in another episode, and why they did it.
And I'm all over the place. This is a wild topic.
Yeah, it's a wild topic, because if that were to happen, the other argument that I made in a YouTube video I made about this topic is maybe we get the market share back, to your point. Maybe we get control, Ben, back with our listings, where it's like, Zillow, I don't need you no more. You know what I mean? It's like, I've got the product, you know?
Right.
So I don't know. That's an interesting, I haven't spent any time thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious too, I don't know if you had another topic, but how this is going to affect for sale by owners, because on one hand, most of them, the majority of them are more than willing to pay that 3% commission, right? So I wonder if on one hand they'll say, yeah, we'll just work with an agent because it's only 3% now, or if it's like, hey, because they're still in the mindset of like the buyer's agent is bringing it, so now they're like, now I really don't need an agent because none of the buyers have agents anymore.
No, I think it's the opposite. You just said it. If most for sale by owners are willing to pay 3%, you could have a listing agent at 3%. Why would you do it yourself?
It's not as big of a number. It's not as daunting. Commission number.
Well, most will pay 3% to a buyer's agent and not have representation.
But what I'm saying, and I agree with that, because most of them are like, hey, I'm willing to pay 3%. So now let's say this shift happens, they're like, hey, I'll just work with an agent for 3%. But most of them are willing to pay that 3% because they think the buyer's agent is bringing them the buyer. Mm-hmm. So now with no buyer's agents involved, do they think, oh, now I really don't need an agent because all of the buyers are going to be coming directly to me with the way that this is now going?
Potentially. But the thing is, now you have to say, okay, can the for sale by owner get as many people to their product? It's the same thing. Right. You're talking
now
to
a real marketing game, like you said.
It's a real marketing game. I'll give you the best analogy ever. I'll go back to the car business. So I'm a car slappy. Okay, you two know that. You two know that. And so I'm buying and selling cars probably, I don't know, monthly. It seems like. But here's the thing, dude. I try to sell my cars on my own.
Yeah,
pretty high end vehicles. True. Dude, I'm getting destroyed. Yeah. I give it to my wholesaler to do their marketing stuff, and they send it to a Ferrari dealership or a Porsche dealership. Dude, they sell for a sexy premium. This is the same thing, you know? Yeah. So it really comes down to a marketing and exposure thing. It's the same argument of like, well, the car business is just the best. You know what I mean? Like people, the buyer, the consumer sentiment is also that when they buy a vehicle from a dealership versus some guy they met off the internet, you cannot tell me that they don't have a sense of worry about buying some car, you know, that they met some dude off Facebook Marketplace versus going into the dealership and buying it from the dealer. Why? Because the consumer believes, and not only believes, it's the truth, that there's all kinds of compliance that dealership has to go through in order to sell a vehicle. The days of selling lemons, like, dude, that's just gone. you don't know what you're going to get if you buy a car off off the side of the street from Bob. It's like,
right.
So the same thing happens in real estate, because there's a code of ethics, because there's a process, because there's legal ramifications that agents have to go through, a professional standard of bringing these properties to the market. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing that gives consumers confidence in purchasing a house through that channel versus dealing with every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's just trying to sell their house, by themselves.
And it just leaves, and I know we kind of mentioned this, but it leaves so much, because it's a transition phase. Like if and when, it sounds like more of a when, to be honest. Like when this potentially happens, it's a transition, and it's in these transitions because right now if we go through with this, the whole process, it becomes more efficient, right? And so it makes the market more efficient, and in that transition to efficiency, there's a gap for you to be able to position yourself to take advantage of that and take up market share. It's like when you went from, I don't know, having to go to car dealerships to see what the product was, to now there's Carvana, there's this, that made it more efficient, and those big players took advantage of that efficiency and took up market share. So as agents, like, you have opportunity to take advantage of this transition.
And something that gives me a lot of excitement just hearing you say that is nobody has figured out the secret sauce for marketing to get listing leads.
That's
so
right.
All of a sudden, all the agents have the power again to earn this business and really take a stronghold through what some would call old school methods or whatever. But there's no, right? Like, I mean, there's nobody out there, give me X dollars, I'll give you X guaranteed listings like you can on the buy side.
It's true. That's a good point. I was not skeptical. I just didn't, with these 2 class action lawsuits, I've been following them like crazy. I've been reporting on them like insane, because I can't see how agents aren't paying attention, because it's the industry you're in, and it will alter your entire career. And so how an agent doesn't pay attention, but until this lawsuit just settled last week, that kind of put me over the edge to say, wow, this actually is probably a lot more likely to happen than I thought it would. And then seeing Swinepool's letter and him like, oh yeah, this is most likely going to happen. And then the hardest thing to argue in court is if Ben, you're the judge, I'm saying, hey, and I'm arguing on the side of the plaintiff, the millions and millions of homeowners part of these class actions. I'm like, Judge, the United States is the only one who does it this way. And I have all this evidence and all this case law and all these things on how the rest of the world operates. That's hard to defend your position on. Why would we do it any different? And you look at and you scrutinize how it's been done for a long time, and you start to. What I had confirmation bias. I'm like, let's not change it. Let's just keep it the way that it is. But when I started to open my mind up to say this is a real viable possibility, I started to look at it differently. And there's arguments to be made on why it potentially is better for the consumer. Because that's what this is all about. It's not about realtors. Trust me, the legal system is not, they have no regard for what's better for the realtor. That's not even part of the case. This is all about the consumer. And so that's what's being argued. What is better for the consumer? And so as I'm looking at this, I'm saying, at first there was a bunch of arguments against changing this. But now that I'm open-minded to it, I'm starting to say, well, maybe it is better for the consumer. Certainly it's better for the seller. No one's going to argue that fact. But how is it better for the buyer, right? That's the argument. Because before I was like, well, how is it better for the buyer? They're going unrepresented. Now you have this class of consumer that has no protection. Aren't those the people that we're also looking to protect? It's not just the seller, it's the buyer. And how are they going to finance buyer agent commissions if they wanted that? They go unrepresented. But, what would the upside be for you guys for the buyer if buyer agency was not a thing?
The only thing that comes to mind immediately, and maybe I'm off on this, is just like with a 6% commission, a lot of the times the seller will factor that into the price. So now, the price couldn't maybe not as inflated. It's the
I
first thing that
disagree.
comes to mind. Yeah. Okay.
I disagree. I think that's an argument that gets brought up quite a bit, but I don't believe that when a seller and even an agent decide on the list price, do they say, okay, we think it could sell for X price, you charge 6%, all right, let's add 6% to the list price. I don't think that happens. And not
the seller
only
has the equity.
Yeah, well, not only that, but there's no line adjustment on an appraisal for commissions.
Right.
That's why I don't believe that sales price and value of real estate and real estate commissions, there's not a correlation to real value of property. So much so, there's no appraiser on the planet.
That's true. It couldn't be because the agents charge different commissions, and so that would, it
has nothing to do with sales price. You have a service, right? And so you charge a commission for the service you provide, and they don't even have to pay you out of their equity of their home if they don't want. They could pay you a different way. They can just write you a check from their checking account. So I don't think those two things are correlated as much. Ben, what were we going to say to that?
No, why is it better for the buyer? I just think I just think it's because potentially it's been seen that newer agents participate on the buy side, right? So having an asset that's so expensive, one of the largest investments, assets, transactions that people make in their life, and the industry just has such a bad reputation, maybe it cleans that up. And now we just have more experience in the industry. We have one person running the deal, and it just goes a lot smoother. And like going back to my previous point of emotion, you could definitely argue that a buyer's agent may save the buyer money on negotiation, but I would argue 80% of buyer's agents don't have that type of skill set.
No.
So that sometimes they might even cause the opposite.
They blow the deal up. Yeah.
Correct. So you guys nailed it. So here's my upside for the buyers. I just wrote this down, Ben. You bring up great points. I think more times than not, what I wrote down on my notes is buyer's agents screw it up.
Yeah.
Because they can't
They're
negotiate.
trying to appease the buyer.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so they screw it up. They can't get there on time. Think about this. If there's one listing agent who holds this product, all the buyers have equal opportunity. If we go to a world where listing agents have open houses on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and there's a standard of how you see properties, all the buyers don't have to wait for Colton, your schedule, because you're a full-time teacher and you can only show properties on the weekend. That destroys the buyer's opportunity to get to these properties. Yeah. But if there was a standard of showing, oh my gosh, it's so much better for the buyer. Not only that,
and the seller.
And the listing agent. The buyer's agent, I think, sometimes screws it up because there's that middleman. And if you're dealing with an inexperienced buyer's agent who doesn't know how to handle that conversation with the buyer, that buyer could have had that house had they not had the wrong agent. Had they dealt with just a listing agent, and oh, by the way, we have evidence to suggest that is happening. In a world where there are buyer's agents, buyers are still bypassing free representation and going directly to the listing agent. Mm-hmm. It's happening right now. So what would that suggest? That if it wasn't even possible, then why would you? And so I would love to debate that. If someone sees that differently, like, oh, no, the buyer agent would survive if all the buyers had to pay their agent their own commission out of their pocket. Because right now, there's not a mortgage product that will let you finance that. I think we lost Ben. Cole, no, I still got you?
Yeah.
Okay. There's not a mortgage product that would allow you to finance commissions right now, right? So I would love to debate that where someone would be like, no, we think the 5 million buyers would pay their commission. I'd love to see it. I'd love to talk about it. I believe solely in the value of a listing agent and all that they bring, because that's what we do, right?
Yep.
But it'll just, only time will tell. Oh, he's coming back now. He's moving. Let's see. There he is. Assign. Oh, let's try that again. Ben. Nope. how we do it. Yeah, he's all screwed up. All right.
No.
Anyway, so we're any comments in the Facebook group, because I would love to see how people are seeing this.
No, I think they're either in agreement or just lost for words.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. But again, and that suit that settled on this, I'm so shocked that MLS just threw in the towel. Was like, yep, fine.
Yeah, I'm interested to read more into that about their decision and why they did it, and it's interesting. Does that article cover it? We'll probably maybe link that in this video.
Yeah, we can do that. The whole, I mean, they're all public record. So the full case is all settled, and it's like a 40-page document. You can go through the judge's remarks and why they ruled the way they ruled, the whole thing.
Yeah, somebody just said they're literally stumped on this one.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. So anyway, we'll see what happens, but we'll see you guys on Wednesday.